Welcome to Arts, Work, Life, a video podcast from the Association of Performing Arts Professionals. I am your host, Claire Caulfield.
And I'm Jenny Thomas, executive producer.
For the 5th episode of our 5th season, we're bringing you 4 stories about advocacy.
Claire, we've had a lot of stories on this podcast from people advocating for better workplaces, more access, and a better world.
That is so true, Jenny. And we just want to jump right in today with our first storyteller, who is Shenea Stiletto. Shenea has been an acrobat and a gymnast her entire life. For years, she traveled around the world as a circus performer and a circus arts teacher. But when the pandemic started, she found herself stuck in one place with no income, no security, and no safety net. And because of Shenea's unique background, she decided to stand up and demand a safety net because she's seen the worst of what can happen when athletes and artists aren't protected. Here's Shenea.
I found myself starting to get very angry because I was in a category of kind of a forgotten class. So within that, I thought, okay, I need to use my voice at this particular time to advocate for myself. Most oftentimes, who's advocating for the circus arts industry are the big guns, are the big companies, are the representatives from Cirque du Soleil, from the Big Apples, from the Ringling Brothers, and their PR people. And you hear from people that are in charge. You don't hear from the performers. You don't hear from the tech. You don't hear from the crew. You don't hear from those of us that keep those big companies working. And neither had Washington, D.C., and I knew that. These were conversations that I've been having within the circus industry all over the world for decades prior to the pandemic. We just weren't having these conversations into a microphone for fear of being blacklisted from the industry. I know that sounds pretty serious and like an exaggeration, but word travels fast within the circus arts industry. It's a very niche environment. It's very unusual, much like the USA Gymnastics environment that I grew up in and came from. I am a part of one of the biggest sexual abuse cases in U.S. history. I, along with the hundreds of survivors of Larry Nassar, were deeply, deeply impacted by the USA Gymnastics organization, who failed us as minors on multiple levels and allowed for us to be sexually and physically and mentally abused by our coaches and doctors, and also by the U.S. Olympic Committee. Unfortunately, for the last 13 years, I have gotten an education in and around advocacy that I never would have wanted for myself. But I had a lot of engagement with Washington, with working with various Congress people, senators, lobbyists, working on getting statutes changed, policy reform, and laws passed. I've been able to infuse and utilize all of that experience as an advocate for the circus arts industry too. Those of us that wanted to bring our heads together thought there's got to be a better way forward. There's got to be a way that we are going to get access to the basics, unemployment, which took performers and circus workers months, if not over a year, to be able to get. And several of them were simply waiting on their last paycheck, which was worth, for many of them, thousands and thousands of dollars. So we felt that it was time to contact our representatives. I think we all were very nervous and apprehensive because our representatives, they have not heard from the circus arts industry. And the sad part is that people love us and they love hearing about the circus, there is another side of that where people don't take us very seriously. And you get to hear that when you go and you do those normal adulting things like trying to buy a car or getting insurance or getting a loan or contacting your congressperson or your senator or your representative, where you see that they don't really know what to do with you. And so our very first meeting on behalf of our advocacy committee, everyone was very nervous. They've not had to advocate for themselves within Washington, D.C., or even speak to their local representative about the strains of the circus arts industry. So our first meeting felt like a huge triumph in terms of circus arts advocacy. Things like this just don't happen overnight, even if they seem to happen overnight. There are meetings and things and conversations behind the scenes all the time. We need an industry that continues to stay hungry because we haven't achieved our goals. We've achieved small things, and we need not only our own internal industry support, we need the public support. Please write your representative on behalf of the circus arts industry. Please, as an arts community, include us in your arts advocacy. Please include us in your organizations, in your panels, in your conversations. It's easy to rile people up around arts advocacy when they are down, when everyone is in the same boat. However, when things started to open up, Nevada being a state that opened up far faster than many other surrounding states, and with the robust circus entertainment industry here, they got back to work faster than the majority of us. And so it became and has become a very difficult road in trying to corral as much support around these issues as we were able to get during the thick of the lockdowns. People can't make meetings in the same way. We can't schedule things in the same way. Circus workers are more inclined to go to outreach and support for jobs mainly at this point. They don't want to make sure that they're going to have access to unemployment if something happens to them on this job, and they don't realize that that safety net is still not certain. We still don't have policy and legislation. We were not able to basically codify or confirm those emergency safety nets. They do not exist as an undercurrent or as a functioning safety net. And so keeping that in the minds and ears of industry professionals right now is very daunting. This work takes a long time. It's not for the faint of heart, just like we all say that circus arts is not for the faint of heart, because it's a very difficult profession. And I, in having these conversations, consistently put my career on the line, and I refuse to care. I, throughout being a USA Gymnastics survivor for the past 13 years, have been called a liar, have been called a money grabber, have been called a professional victim. You have to build up a very supportive community around yourself to be able to take that kind of heat and to be able to engage in an environment that's not fully supportive of you, or that wants these conversations to go away. People sometimes see people like me at this stage in my life and think that it's super easy for me, that, I don't go through stress and strain, or that I don't go to therapy all the time, which I do, that I don't go to support groups, which I do, but I have not always had that. And so it's been very challenging over these past few years, trying to get people to have conversations on camera that are explicit and that are naming names because of how retaliatory this environment is within the circus arts. There's many people that do not want to see their power being taken away. And I dealt with that in reforming these youth sports environments where there's a lot of people that think that they're the good ones, but they are literally the ones that are helping to perpetuate these issues through the desire to have incremental change. Incremental change that is good for them, that makes them look good. Change that is very superficial. We cannot have them go for another 5 years in a way that does not serve the industry professional in the best way unless you happen to be 1%. I would love to live these changes within the industry, but I would also like to leave this industry better than when I found it. And I think that that's all of our responsibilities. You shouldn't just eat. Everyone else gets to eat too. We should not shoulder those burdens for these companies to make billions of dollars off of our talent. And we can't continue to be intimidated by this industry and by the lure of having such a glamorous job that we allow ourselves to just take it.
And Jenny, we decided to start with this story in this episode because this is just the textbook definition of an advocate. Someone seeing a problem and going straight to those in power to lobby for change.
That's right. And I really want to highlight that Shenea recognized a gap. She wants to stand up for the little guys, and that comes with a risk, but a risk that she was willing to take.
Absolutely. And we recently received an exciting update from Shenea about a big career move. So let's play that now.
Originally, as the Circus Arts Guild of America, invited to participate in some type of, events with the White House, as performers and engaging in that way. And we said, you know what? We are a sector and an industry, and we deserve to be taken as seriously as all the other sectors and industries that you are inviting to the White House to have conversations around labor. And around increased visibility for policy rights. And what does that look like for our industry? So fighting to get into those spaces, having year strategic meetings. And then also, too, I think the biggest issue within our industry is that we do not have organized labor. The majority of the workers in the circus or circ arts are not represented by a union like a SAG-AFTRA, for example, or like AGVA, for example. We're having issues with fair wages, with affordability, with living costs, with having access to adequate health care and, and unemployment, benefits. Paid leave is a big one within our industry. Things that I think all working arts folks and all working individuals are all dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And I do want to round it out by saying that I am running for the Nevada State Assembly as well. And that is the second or third act of my advocacy. And I feel as though this is a very important and pregnant time for those of us within the arts environment to run for office and to make our voices prominent and our issues prominent and take up space within local and state legislators and also too on a federal level.
And for our next story, we're focusing on someone with infectious enthusiasm, which is kind of a form of advocacy within itself.
What you'll hear in this story is how someone can put aside all doubt and keep going.
Absolutely. And Ami Otero Minar is our next storyteller. She starts her story with a memory from when she was about 6 or 7 years old. Ami's childhood was spent on Okinawa Island, a very sparsely populated island in Japan. One of her most vivid memories was lying on tatami mats and reading manga, Japanese comic books. Then one day, she came across a series about a Japanese woman studying flamenco dancing in Spain. Here's Ami.
People did not take serious with her because she was Asian and she didn't know how to dance. And she became a professional dancer. And I was overwhelmed. And why she did this? I mean, since I was 6, 7 years old, so I don't understand the full meaning of it, but it took me to my heart.
Ami was immediately hooked by the bright colors of the flamenco skirts, and she longed to hear the music described in the manga. She begged her parents for lessons, but on her small island, no one had even heard of flamenco before.
Back then, there is no such thing as flamenco classes. Plus, my family was poor, and even there is a flamenco classes, they could not take me to the classes.
Fast forward about 2 decades, and Ami is living in Dallas, Texas, of all places. She opened her Sunday newspaper and saw an advertisement for flamenco classes.
So I was so excited, and I have not thinking about the manga for over 20 years, and I just got excited, and I brought back my childhood memory.
Ami signed up and was completely unprepared when she walked into that first class.
I was so shocked. There was that flamenco shoes with the little tiny nails in it, and I couldn't believe it. And I also had to get the ruffled skirt. Everything was so new to me. It was so different than in my imagination. Because I never heard the music before. I never seen dancing. But I loved it, and I loved the people. I loved everything of it.
Ami's husband's job then took the family to New York City, where she continued to take flamenco lessons. She found a vibrant community of dancers and developed her own unique style.
Totally different ballgame. When I walked into the room, I can feel the flamenco energy, the excitement, and literally the building was, tremor. Because of all this footwork and other room doing the footwork here, practicing I can feel the energy going to my soul. I say, let's dance. It touched something deep within me. I'm thinking, this have to go the world, not just myself. I said, this have to go to world. I have to take this to the next level. And that was my first world tour.
Ami later founded her own dance company called Admission Nation and started preparing an international tour.
It was finding a theater and sponsors because it was my first time and I didn't know anyone, and trying to connect with the other flamenco community to help me set up the working visa. And since flamenco community, it doesn't matter you're local or overseas, they are open arm and try to help you much as you can.
She's not just a producer and founder. She also dances in these shows.
When I'm dancing on the stage, it's not about seeking perfection. It's about being honest with myself. I'm standing on the stage and receiving the energy from a musician and the audience. When I'm on the stage, it's hard to say, but it's this totally different person. I'm a Ryukyu Okinawa indigenous woman, and it don't have to be Hispanic or Gitano to learn flamenco. Different cultures dance. And flamenco, you don't have a height or weight, no limitation. You have to be true to yourself and dance you who you are. Your passion and your goal doesn't expire. Just keep going. I started my company when I was 50 years old, and I started dancing when I'm 30, and I kept going. If you love about it, passionate about it, keep going. Go for it.
And so, Jenny, why did you advocate for including Ami's story in this episode?
Right. I mean, it's not a traditional advocacy story. However, she could have quit so many times and it just didn't even occur to her. She had such a belief in herself and she just put it out of her mind that there were obstacles. And so it's like her mantra was keep going, keep going.
Absolutely. And it's a great message for any advocate who wants to make real change. You really need that, go for it mindset, and you need that perseverance that Ami showed so well throughout this story that I just loved so much.
That's right.
And next, another story that I love so much. It is short, memorable, and music filled. So let's cue it up. The 2015 musical Hamilton was groundbreaking and different in a lot of ways. But something kind of niche is that the company, the chorus of singers, often introduces the character who is about to start singing.
Here comes the General Washington.
The The writer of this musical, Lin-Manuel Miranda, uses his musical technique to introduce characters a lot.
I put myself back in the narrative.
Sabrina Martinez noticed this right away because it saved her a ton of work.
Even though I'm sure Lin was not thinking this when he wrote it, but one of the things we do as audio describers is we help the listeners get accustomed to voices.
You see, Sabrina is an audio describer, which means she helps blind and low vision people experience live theater.
So I will say the name of the character before they start talking, and so that way the listener knows this is the person talking or this is the person singing. But if you listen to like what Lin did in Hamilton, I can say something like, and from the back of the stage comes, and then the character says, Alexander Hamilton.
Alexander Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, America sings for you.
If you've ever seen an audience member with a little headset, it's likely there's someone like Sabrina, tucked away in a soundproof booth, describing what's happening on stage for them.
Any scenes, any sets, any of the visual elements that are important.
A lot of times this means Sabrina is giving her listeners a heads up about who is about to speak. But she didn't have to do that in Hamilton, which is a huge relief, because that show had plenty of other challenges, mainly its wordiness. For those who have seen the show, it's pretty much non-stop singing. And audio describers like Sabrina can't talk over any of the characters, but they still have to describe the scenery, who is on stage, and anything else the blind patron might need to know.
The users, the listeners want to laugh when the rest of the audience laughs. So you need to know what's going to be funny, what the visual jokes are, and you need to get yourself in there so they know what's funny at the same time as the rest of the audience.
This level of coordination and care takes a lot of practice. She's basically writing an entire second script.
Depending on the show, if it's a play where the set doesn't change, it might take me like 8 to 10 hours to prepare. But for a musical where there's a lot of characters, a lot of dancing, a lot of set changes, or even projection, it might take me as much as 20 hours to prepare.
So that's on top of seeing the show at least once and consulting with other audio describers. However, the pay rate for audio describers isn't really on par with the level of time they put in and the level of skill.
I'll tell you that in some theaters in Houston, I do describe as a volunteer. In other, I am compensated, but it's more like an honorarium, but the compensation isn't commensurate with that amount of time.
So this is confusing to Sabrina because it seems like the directors of many shows don't seem to care if all their audience members have an equal experience. That's reflected in the pay, or lack thereof, for audio describers. Also, very few directors provide scripts for these audio describers. Each theater's describer writes their own.
Ironically, there's no oversight at all. It's literally whatever you think it should be. In fact, I can share a story with you that happened locally about Book of Mormon. I couldn't describe both performances that blind and low vision patrons were going to, so one of my colleagues described another performance. The problem with her description was she didn't stay true to the director's vision.
According to Sabrina, this particular describer found some of the scenes in the show racist. So they just lied about what was really happening on stage.
Ethically, we are supposed to be describing the director's vision, not our own vision of the show. We need to stay consistent because that's actually what the Americans with Disability Act provides for, is for a consistent experience for anyone with disabilities.
Sabrina's friend was actually in the audience that evening and was relying on the audio describer to understand the show.
And she still says to this day she never saw Book of Mormon just because she knows that she did not see the real show.
Sabrina wants to see a future where touring directors take audio describers on the road with them, instead of asking local theaters to provide their own possibly untrained describers. Sabrina hopes directors and costume designers and set builders and dance captains will all want to collaborate with audio describers to ensure the audio description is just as amazing as the action on stage.
People don't realize that blind and low vision people attend theater. I just feel like what we do with accessibility is just an extension of what's happening on the stage. And if the people can come in and not have to worry about, am I going to be able to navigate this theater? I don't know what's going on, why everyone's laughing and I'm not in on the joke. Any of those things, any of those services we can provide just makes the experience of theater that much better for the people sitting in the audience. And everyone deserves an equal experience of it.
I think this piece is so important to revisit for a couple of reasons. First, Sabrina understands how to be a good ally.
And yeah, absolutely, but also how not to be a good ally, right? Sabrina's colleague who changed the context of that piece, probably thought they were doing the right thing for people of color and the deaf community, but they absolutely were not.
Right. And additionally, her work just advocating that these roles exist and create more accessibility is a really important message.
Yeah, and bringing up, fair pay, directors providing notes, these roles existing.
Right. It makes it all possible for people to experience the arts.
Absolutely. So important, which brings us to last, but certainly not least, our next storyteller, a fan favorite on this podcast, Mr. Sam Simon. Sam Simon was first featured in season 2 when he spoke about how his Alzheimer's diagnosis impacted his career as a playwright. And then in season 4, he spoke about living and performing with Alzheimer's, the physical, mental, and spiritual realities of the disease. And also about the one-man show he created, Dementia Man, an existential journey. When I interviewed Sam last year, Sam had performed the show over 60 times and was touring around the country. Here's Sam.
We were pretty much full houses each time. Now that I perform the show 50 to 60 times, I do pretty well. It's still not memorized, but there are still moments where I lose awareness. My wife, Susan, is now my cognitive navigator, I call. And Susan she'll call out the page of the line number or even say, to your left, Sam, if need be. And it's an hour-long show. It's solo. I have a very simple set. It's the background of an imagined trip to Switzerland because there is a narrative of life with the disease, with Alzheimer's or so-called dementia is not worth living. And it imagines and it addresses, should I take that trip? Or how do I live a meaningful life, a life with this disease? And spoiler alert, it is that the life is indeed worth living. I got an email, and it was from a Mrs. Hogan. She told me that she and her husband, Dr. Hogan, she said, we saw your show in July. My husband passed away last week. I'm pausing on purpose. Her husband passed away last week. And there was an attachment to her email. She said, my husband has drawn and created a self-portrait of him and his memory loss. And it is an incredibly beautiful work of art, deep green, a caricature of a human being himself, his eyes closed and his hand up against the side of his head. She said, I want to donate the drawing to you and for your work because it was so meaningful to him and us and seeing it had such an impact. And I'm humbled by the responses and reactions. I get gratitude often. One of the surprising things are people who immediately raise their hands. Usually the first person who says anything and says, oh, thank you, Sam. My husband, my father, my uncle had dementia. I always wondered what it might have felt like to them, him, her. I now think I might understand it just a little better. The word that describes my disease is dementia. I hate it. I am part of an advocacy movement to substitute that word with probably cognitive disability. So I'm going to end up renaming the play. This is you heard it first here. So rather than calling it Dementia Man, maybe it'll be my existential journey, the Alzheimer's story. That won't be part of this using this terrible, terrible word. This work, this theatrical piece, is advocating for some radical change in what is going to become and is becoming an overwhelming force in American society. That's the aging of the baby boomers and the impact of that on their children. Two generations going through this a broken system. The power of theater. My doctors believe that my work and my expression have helped me continue to be healthy. There is a story to be told, and there are very few of us, if anyone right now, with the disease on stage telling this story. Theater can be entertainment, it can be joy, and there is joy in this story. It can help others imagine a different world for themselves and for their loved ones.
And now an update from Sam Simon.
Breaking news, I've been accepted to the United Solo performance in New York for this fall. And so October 22nd, Thursday at 7 p.m. at Theater Row, if you're in New York. So that's really good news for the show. It continues to be very well received. We have to keep monitoring my own health and my own journey. It could be better, but it's not terrible. So I'm just going along, as my neurologist said, until I get worse. Again, I have learned by doing the power of theater and art. And, I'm fond of saying that people may know what's right. And you have people on different sides of things, and you can write all the policy or papers you want. But until you can move someone's heart and soul to do what we think, what you're advocating for, I don't think we get to make change. And theater is at the heart of changing hearts.
Obviously, so many beautiful moments in that story, but I love how in the update he said that his focus is on changing hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. Changing hearts and minds is the basis for advocacy work.
Yeah.
And not only that, he's advocating for us reconsidering the role that people with memory loss and their caretakers have in society.
Yes,
and
the caretakers.
Ultimately, he's hoping that we imagine a different world.
Which so perfectly sets us up to our next episode, because next time on Arts Work Life, we'll be talking about the evolution of the performing arts world.
See you then.
Arts Work Life is a production from APAP, the Association of Performing Arts Professionals. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the storytellers and not necessarily those of APAP. APAP is the national service organization for the performing arts presenting, booking, and touring industry. You can join APAP at apap365.org. I'm Claire Caulfield, your host and producer. Jenny Thomas is our amazing executive producer, and we always want to give a big thank you to Grace Asuncion. Music today from Blue Dot Sessions and the musical Hamilton. This podcast would not be possible without the generous support of the Wallace Foundation, so thank you. Other thank yous to the APAP staff and board of directors, our storytellers today, and the hundreds of thousands of arts workers across the world. Your stories matter, and arts workers are essential. If you made it this far in the episode, you must have liked it, so send this link to your favorite advocate.
Arts, work, life. That's real.